So moving on to fixing your problem. If you've decided that you do in fact have the demons, the first thing, kind of from a big picture standpoint, that you're going to want to look at is your practice routine, your practice matrix. You know, how you spend your time in between rounds working on your game. And if you're a good player, you probably have something that looks similar to, say, you spend a third of your time putting and a third of your time on the short game, pitching and chipping and sand, and maybe a third of your time on the range. And of that time on the range, you kind of have that broken up into thirds. Maybe a third of that range time is wedge shots, another third of it is approaches like irons, and then another third is tee shots. So in the grand scheme of things, if you took your practice time as a whole, you may be spending 10 to 15% of your time working on your tee shots. The problem is, if you've got the demons, like, those tee shots are literally killing your score. And as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter how good you're chipping or putting if you're losing 6 balls around. So we need to rethink that mix of practice. We need to go highly focused on tee shots only. So I advocate, in between rounds, I wouldn't spend a single minute putting or chipping or pitching or hitting sand shots, since those are not relatable at all to hitting drivers. I would hit a few wedges and a few irons to warm up, and kind of get your muscles loose as part of your warm-up. But most of your practice time should be spent on that area that's killing you, which is tee shots. You may hit some irons and wedges kind of in between drives if you're starting to randomize your practice and trying to simulate on-course conditions and so forth. But if you're practicing, whatever the amount of practice time you have per week, nowadays for some of you it might be a couple hours if you have a real job or a family, and some of you that are still trying to play, you might have tons of time. But regardless of what that amount of time is, I think you got to spend 80+% of it working on your tee shots until that problem is solved. So that's the first thing to look at. We want to tightly focus our practice, because, as I mentioned earlier, nobody cares if you save a stroke putting if it's for 83, right? All right, still totally agree with all this. Ditch all the other practice. Unless you have all the time in the world, you can still work on that other stuff, because your body can only handle so many full swings in a given day or session. But if you are the kind of person that has a limited amount of practice time, this is it. I said 80%, I would say 100%. Don't even bother. When I was fixing it, and I fixed it, I don't think I practiced my putting once in a year, or my short game once in a year. I hit a few putts before a tournament round to just get a feel for the speed, but any chance that I had to practice was spent on, full swing tee shot practice, because I just knew that none of the other stuff even matters. If you're losing a half a dozen balls around. So, within reason, as long as you can physically do it, that's it. Practice that.